Hey, what's going on, guys? JayzTwoCents here in the flesh. Mostly. I have no idea where I was going with that. I've been paying attention to my demographics a lot lately here on YouTube, mostly at the request of you guys, the viewers, because you guys want to see more things that pertain to something obtainable for you guys. Well, looking at those demographics, I realized that 98.6% of my viewers are male, and the age is between 13 and 24. So that got me thinking. Most of the people are either living at home or they're in a dorm. And you guys are gonna need small computer cases and probably something that's quiet because you have to live with it. It's gonna be in your bedroom with you. Maybe you sleep with it at night, not like literally in your bed. I would probably sleep with Skunkworks if it fit in my bed and didn't weigh 82 pounds. But quite a few of you have asked me to review cases that are more small, they're easy to move around, and they are quiet. Well, if that's what you're looking for and you're a 13 to 24-year-old male here on YouTube, you should probably go outside and get a girlfriend. Or you guys can stick around and continue to watch this video about Cooler Master's new Silencio 352. And if you didn't know, Silencio actually means silence in French. Or maybe it was Spanish. Or Italian? I don't know, I speak the American.
Gigabyte's Flex Display technology automatically detects and connects up to 4 displays for the best gaming experience in multi-display Ultra HD. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Now in terms of form factor, this thing is pretty dang tiny. It is a mid-tower and it is for the Micro-ATX form factor, or Mini-ATX. Cannot fit a standard size ATX case in this. If you want to do a standard size ATX, you need to bump up to the Silencio 652, which we will be looking at in a separate video. Side panel, as you can see here, is solid. There is no window on this particular model that we're taking a look at. If you look at the back here, you can see we are all black finish here, which makes it nice and sleek. And again, another solid side panel on the side. And we have a single 120 or 140 exhaust fan grille on the top. Now moving around to the front, this is the part that people are always most interested in because the front of the case is what you're gonna pretty much be looking at all the time. We do have a nice polished band finish around the front of the case. This is gonna look a lot like their N200 case, which was actually a very popular case for Cooler Master. And basically what they did was, if you recall when I did my CES video, I said they were trying to reduce their portfolio size by making their product range more narrow, but make more sense. So they've kind of taken the N series of cases and made them silence optimized and calling them now the Silencio. So we have a more streamlined, cost-effective, sleek-looking, quiet case that sort of would have been a separate line, but now we're just taking a look here. All the Silencio stuff is like the N200, N600 crammed into these new form factors. So we do have a swing-away door here. It opens from right to left, which I think is kind of unfortunate, you know, just starting off here with my review, because most people, if you're right-handed, a lot of people tend to put their computers on the right. And let's be honest here, the majority of the world is right-handed. There are left-handed people, and you guys can put this on the left and you can rejoice because the door opens the proper way for you. But if this is on the right and you open this, you have to reach around it to get to the front, your 5 1/4 bay, maybe a 3.5 inch card reader, whatever. That is unfortunate. I wish you could switch the side. Have, you know, a little bit of a pet peeve there. But opening up the front, you can see we do have here a easy removable fan filter. It is on a hinge here, so it folds down. You're not gonna lose it. And you do have a 120 millimeter fan pre-installed with room for a second 120 millimeter fan. And then you can close that back up and you don't actually risk losing the filter because it's on a hinge. Now the front intake is a little bit restricted because the only place you have air coming in is through these grills on the side. So you kind of have a little bit of give and take when it comes to silence optimized cases. If you have it wide open for airflow, you also have it wide open for noise penetration or noise exfiltration to make it out of the case, whether it be your graphics card noise, hard drive noise, fan noise, whatever. You're always gonna have fan noise, even in a silent optimized case, because the fans are gonna be on the exteriors of the case, bringing air in through the atmosphere and through the filters. So there's always gonna be some fan noise, but in this case, it's a trade-off. You're gonna lose some airflow for the sake of some silence optimization. Now on the back here, the thumb screws are not self-retaining. whatever that word. I don't know if they have a specific word for that. I forget. As you can see, I just dropped one. Didn't do that on purpose. I actually fat fingered that. So they're not going to stay in the case. So you can lose them, but that doesn't matter really. Honestly, most cases don't have self-retention. But looking at the panel here, you can see we do have some sound deadening foam on here. It's just to help kind of keep the sound muffled inside the case. One thing I'm excited to see though, is as you can see, all of the cables on the inside are black. And that's always been a pet peeve of mine when companies will use colored cables because this isn't 1996 anymore. We like things, you know, black and sleek and stealthy looking. Unless of course you're doing something like Skunkworks and you want it to be completely blingy and look at me and flamboyant. Or in some other builds that I'm doing here in the very near future, even brighter and more look at me than Skunkworks. But that's a teaser for a future video, which I know you guys hate, so therefore I had to do it. So pre-installed inside here, we do have a 120 intake and a 120 rear exhaust. The rear here is actually compatible with 80 mil, 92 mil, and 120. I don't know why anybody would remove the 120 to put an 80 or a 92, but it's there. As mentioned earlier, the top cover here is compatible with a 120 or a 140. And then you do have 4 PCI slots on here because it is a Micro-ATX form factor. And we do have our pouch of hardware here, which has some zip ties, some screws, more thumb screws, more standoffs, rubber dampening mounts for your hard drives, as well as a motherboard speaker, which I like to see. It's always useful to have a motherboard speaker for troubleshooting. And then up here, twist tied in, we do have what I believe this is. Yes, this is the sound deadening retention plate for the top of the case. Now, some system builders actually prefer to not use a top exhaust. They like to use a rear exhaust. That way you have a direct crossflow front to rear of the case. So if that's you, you can take this thing and you can actually mount it on the top here, just like that. As you can see, it fits in there and it is magnetized, so there is no need for screws. You just stick it on there, it's a magnet, it's not coming off. As you can see, we can tilt the case all around, it's not going anywhere. Power supply does mount in the bottom here. You have a filtered air intake for the power supply on the bottom here. As you can see, it's a little guy there. And then we do have on the back panel also that same sound deadening material that we found on the front panel. And one thing I do like to see, especially on lower tier cases like this where they don't tend to have as many bells and whistles as their bigger brothers, is options. Now when it comes to the hard drive cage on here, you can remove it. It's not riveted in, it's screwed in. So you can remove this if you want to get better airflow in there, because you do have more mounting options for the hard drives, which we'll talk about in a second. But this hard drive cage does have room here for 2 3.5-inch drives, and then it also has on the top right here an SSD drive mount location, so you can put an SSD on there as well. When it comes to the drive cages on here, before we move on to the back, we do have a 5.25 bay and a 3.5-inch bay here. And on the bottom of this, another SSD mounting location. So you've kind of got all over different places here. You could put a ton of different SSDs or hard drives and still have lots of room. Now the back of the motherboard tray does reveal that we have 2 additional SSD mounting locations right here with the rubber standoffs that you just kind of slide down in there, and you can mount more SSDs on the back. So that's up to 4 SSDs we can already mount on this thing, as well as a ton of tie-off locations here for good cable management. You can see the bottom here is wide open, so you have plenty of room to route your cables over here to the hard drive tray or up here to the SSDs. Unfortunately, all of the case cable management pretty much has to be done internally. There's not a lot of room here behind the motherboard tray. In fact, you only have about 1/4 inch. Now, as you can see here on the back panel, you do have a little bit of a bump in there to give you a little bit more space when it comes to cable management, but it's not much, and it's not enough to make really any sort of a difference when it comes to cable management, especially with how thick 24-pin cables are. You're not going to fit those looms behind here. So you do have plenty of room though to hide extra cables down here if you need to get them out of the way. But because this doesn't have a case window on there, you don't need to go too crazy with the cable management either, because you're not going to see it. A case like this is all about function over form when it comes to that sort of thing. And in fact, moving those cables internally into the case allows it to have a very narrow width, so you can fit this in a lot of computer cabinets or entertainment centers, and a lot of different options when it comes to where this thing can fit. Now lastly on the front, one thing I want to mention here is we do have two USB 3.0, one USB 2.0 mic and headphone jack, as well as a built-in card reader. So the card reader is nice to see. It's a nice little bonus, especially if you're doing photography or videography, sort of like I am. You don't have to keep connecting into the camera to offload your photos and such. You can do it right here with the built-in card reader. So guys, that is the Cooler Master Silencio 352. Right now, at the time of making this video, it's about $78 on Amazon. Now, the cool thing about this is even though it does have a 120 or a 140 slot on the top, you could, well, no, actually, you couldn't mount an all-in-one cooler in the top. There's not enough space from the top of the motherboard and this grill to be able to fit it. However, you can fit up here in the front, if you remove this drive cage right here and use just the rear option, you can fit a 120 millimeter radiator or a 240 millimeter radiator in the front. So if your all-in-one cooling tubes will reach that far, you could use an all-in-one cooler like the new Silencio series of their 240, or you could put in a custom water cooling loop in here as well. But all things considered, this is a pretty small space that you can fit an awful lot of hardware into. That one just sort of wrote itself, didn't it? All right, guys, I'm going to get on out of here. If you want to interact, hit me up on that social media, that Twitter, that Facebook, that Instagram, and the forums. Oh, yeah, forums. Forget I have forums sometimes. Forum.JayzTwoCents.com. If you guys want to check out current pricing on this thing in the future, one, if you're from the future, please tell me the lotto numbers. I promise I'll build you an amazing system. And two, go and check out the Amazon pricing. That tends to give you a pretty good idea of where things are at when it comes to pricing. As of making this video, it's $78 on Amazon. You can find a link to it down in the description. Helps out the channel, keeps things running, doesn't cost you anything extra. It's a win-win for everybody. All right, I'm gonna get out of here. As always, guys, thank you for watching.